Hello, everyone, and welcome to Whale FM MakersPlace Edition. In this show, we talk with incredible creatives blazing new ground and exploring the endless possibilities of Web3 and the NFT movement. My guest today is revered traditional and crypto artist Reinhard Schmid, whose new collection, Trippy Musings, playfully jilts reality to the bizarre, blending surrealism, perspective, and a whimsical exploration of the subconscious. Reinhard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Super excited to talk with you. Just first off, I have to set the table here because this is a unique scenario. We are actually broadcasting live from the gallery showroom of NEONREAL or NEONREAL. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
I think NEONREAL, it's English word pronounced in a German way.
Okay, yeah. So live from the gallery showroom before it opens to the public in Düsseldorf. I could be butchering that. I'm sorry, Germany. But you were there live before the show opens tonight, so that's super dope.
Yes. I'm really happy that you made this possible, that we could do it from within the gallery today. I think it's well, for me, it's a milestone. You know, I don't know if it's been done before, that there is a coordinated drop together with the real life show here, and it's the second real life NFT gallery in Germany. The first one was in Berlin. Now we're here in Düsseldorf, which is the state capital of NRW. So, and yeah, it's super dope to be here, and thank you so much for the interview. I was just wondering, I think we talked like 3 years ago about doing this together, and I was too shy back then, so thanks a lot for the opportunity.
No problem. And I know some people are like scratching their heads at 3 years. Yeah, we've been at this for a while, and that's one of the beauties of our community and just the crypto art community in general. So can't wait to talk to you about this collection, about the gallery and everything else. But for anyone not familiar, that may be just, seeing you for the first time, learning about your work, can you just tell us a brief bit about yourself and walk us through kind of your background and journey in art?
Okay, I come from traditional art, and I'm a self-employed artist for over 35 years now. And I started back in the 90s. I started with digital work. I lived in Chicago back then. Now I'm back in Germany. And I think it was 2018, I found out about NFTs and started. So I actually made the very first purchase on MakersPlace, and then
Wow.
everybody was experimenting, and we were just so excited that it even works. And then of course I had to mint something, and mine was the third one sold on MakersPlace. So yeah, quite a bit of history here. And then I relatively early, I think I got in touch with you guys, the whale community. Whale Shark's a big supporter, and you've been supporting me so much over the years. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think you're quite humble in how you characterize your background and what you do. So I just like to touch on a few things. My understanding is you come from a family of artists, right? Your father did glass painting as well?
Right. My father was a professional artist. My grandfather was what's the word, artisan. Was carbon glass. I don't know exactly how you say it in English. When you have you kind of cut the surface and kind of cut patterns into the glass.
Like etching?
No. For instance, you have a drinking glass. It's we call it crystal, and it has a pattern.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And my uncle, actually my godfather, he was a designer. Great grandfather was a painter. And yeah, there's a lot of artists in the family.
So, I mean, that's a long spanning career. You talked about the 90s, 30 years doing traditional art, but it looks like 25 of that you were doing stuff digitally, right? My understanding is you were already using the computer in the 90s to kind of make, work up what you would then go take and do in the physical realm. And your process is pretty unique, right? Could you tell people a little bit about what that process was that you do and why it's unique relative to other things?
You mean my digital art or my traditional?
So the Sous technique which
Oh,
I,
okay,
you know, we can talk
that,
more about how that applies digitally, but just in general, I find that fascinating. I mean, I learned about it just, you know, researching a bit about you.
well, when I first started back in 2018, it was all about experimenting, and I thought, well, this would be a nice way to combine my traditional and digital art. Most of my digitals are based on my traditional art. So, for instance, if there is a painting or drawing or something, I take pieces of it, and then I change it digitally, rearrange the elements or add 3D elements to it or arrange it differently in space, animate it and all of that, add soundtracks. I mean, you have a background in music, so I'm always a little shy, when I'm talking to a pro, but
I mean, I would not call myself a pro. You certainly have the credentials to put me in my place with regards to all of these things.
I don't believe it.
So, you know, my understanding, now I could be mistaken, but my understanding of that process, Suver, I could be pronouncing it wrong, is it's done on the back of glass. So essentially, you do the fine details first, because even though you're laying down that first, it's going to end up on the front, because when you flip that glass around, that's what you'll see first, right? And then on top of that, you would layer other colors and things like that. And then the final piece would be the background. You flip that around and it has depth. There's some depth to it. And it's almost like inverted the process that you'd have to think about doing it. It's very cool.
You have to think backwards.
Yeah, I know. So that's super cool. So like, I'm fascinated by that. That's almost as fascinating to me about this nugget in your background that you were a navigator on a submarine.
Yeah, I made a lot of bad decisions in my life. So
Well, I mean, that sounds amazing to me. So I wouldn't call that a bad decision. So, super interesting and very unique from like your traditional art background and how it naturally kind of carried over to getting into the NFT space. I'd like to ask you about that, but before that, just a little bit more about, you know, your art. How would you characterize your art style and approach? Because you have a very unique signature. I can see a piece and know that it's a new piece from you before it even, before I even look at, who's the creator. And that's a great thing. But it certainly is, well, of course, Insta's not working with me right now, so we'll go some other places, but it certainly is something that people aspire to have happen. Because how would you characterize your art style?
That's pretty much the most difficult question because I mean, there are elements of different art styles. There's a little bit of Dadaism. There's obviously a lot of surrealism, but I'm not always a surrealist by definition. I mean, with these works here, I am more than on others because as a surrealist, you try to work completely out of your subconscious, which I don't always do. I do it sometimes. I did it here. But other times I plan my work very carefully, particularly when it's a piece on glass, you have to plan ahead. And there is this term, fantastic art, magical realism, imaginary realism. These are all somewhat in the area of what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Also,
I mean,
also a pop surrealism in a way, Sorry
right.
to
No. Please interrupt me. Everything you say, I'm just on the edge of my seat, learning about your unique approach to everything, and to know that this came from physical manifestations is kind of the inspo for a lot of this, and you can do some different things with animation. Is super cool. I think obviously from a technique perspective, there's classical style there, right? There's classical techniques that you're applying. I almost feel like, and this is just my opinion, that layering technique that you use almost lends itself well to the thematic juxtapositions that you do, right? Like having, that kind of depth where things almost look like they're piecemeal put together, and then you're playing with reality and a lot of other things. I just feel like it's kind of a marriage that was perfect. Was that intended, or did you just kind of fall into that?
Um, I do like to work in different media and bringing different things together, from all different sources. Like you say, the one you're showing now, it's based on a drawing on glass, and then I added the bold red background in a digital. I created some 3D elements in Blender, and then I put it all together. And in the end, it's supposed to blend in a way that none of these resources kind of bother you. It should all be, like you say, it should all be a harmonious marriage in the end.
Yeah, and I feel like there's cool elements of engineering, almost mechanical,
Yeah.
elements in there. Like I love personally, I love schematics, and I see that kind of bleeding into some of the stuff, even in subtle nods to it in a lot of the stuff that you do. Maybe that's from your days on a submarine. I don't know. I have to say, there's a hilarious comment in the Discord. For anyone watching this for the first time, if you're not familiar with Whale, we always have concurrent conversations with our community. And someone loved that you said bad decision about the submarine navigator. Like you just wound up there after a big night. Like, oh, I'm on a submarine. That was not the best decision.
It was a little different. I mean, when I grew up here in the southern part of Germany, there's this area, rural area in southeast corner of Germany. And when I grew up in Cold War Europe, that was pretty much the end of the Western world. And, as a young man, I just wanted to get out of there and see the world, do things. And the possibilities were limited. So I had a thing for ships. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to join the Navy. And I wanted to be a navigator because I love maps, and that's the thing that I always enjoyed. And so, you join the Navy, you go to that Navy school, and, someday they ask you, you want to post off a submarine? Yeah, sure. So next day they take you to a submarine, what is it? And it's a department where they check uh, if you're capable of doing the job. And so that's how I ended up there. In the beginning, I just told a friend yesterday, I thought it was going to be a big adventure, but the first day on the submarine, I knew it was, well, this is what you're going to do that for the next 3 years. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do?
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I will say, in addition to that mechanical element, one thing to me when I look at your work is I always see kind of a hint of, and not in a very forward way, but a hint of eroticism, humor, kind of cheeky tone. It almost is akin. It reminds me of Spirit a lot of our friend A Lot of Money.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think we had a very close approach. I mean, the few times I worked with him was just such an experience, and how we throw the ball at each other, and yeah, it worked very well. There is another question before I forget. May I ask? Uh, you said schematics. I'm not familiar with the term. If you could explain that to me real quick.
Yeah, it's like when there's like a sketch of the mechanical pieces of like a robot, and they have all the parts and like labels on where it would go. It's
Oh,
like the
like a blueprint type of thing?
yes, like a blueprint.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I love that. Yes.
Yeah, so do I, and I definitely noticed that in there.
Mhm.
Um, Random question from the Discord: is it true you need to do a 100-meter underwater swim to ride in the sub? Like the submarine's a hot topic right now in the community.
uh, when I was there, it was not. No,
Okay.
we had to train to exit from 35 meters down.
Okay, train to exit from a certain depth. There you go. To the people tuning in that were very, very interested in this, I want to ask,
Don't do it.
don't do stylistically, right? Like really unique signature. You talked about some of your training. Obviously, your dad was a big part of your formative influences. What else would you cite as kind of this was the formative influences that helped me get to this kind of style I'm so frequently leveraging?
I mean, like I said, I grew up with this, and then of course, when I started to get more serious into art, I had those idols, you know, those great painters in history, particularly early 20th century interested me a lot. Otto Dix, Paul Klee, people like that. And anything that had to do with drawing, etching, and then of course also old masters, you know, like the old Flemish masters, um, Van Eyck and Rembrandt, things like that. And also, like we said, you know, machinery, mechanics, technical drawings, things like that. I have a very big interest in mechanics, and I like to draw machine parts. I could just sit there and watch a machine, you know, moving for 2 hours, never get bored with it.
Yeah, you know, between that, the love of mechanics and machinery, and you know, the technique that you use that is essentially reverse, right? That's kind of deductive reasoning. I almost would say that you love complexity. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Definitely, yes. Yes.
Very, very cool. And then the way that it actually ends up showing to the end viewer, it's like you know, it looks so seamless. It looks so easy, and how it came about. But the more that you look at it, at least personally, I start seeing all these little references and inferences kind of below the surface, like, which I think is really cool.
Thank you.
So you touched on this earlier, you know, about the way that you found your way into the crypto and NFT space. You were using computers to sketch. It made sense around 2018. You were one of the first people on MakersPlace. What drew you in specifically? Was it just, hey, I'm already doing this and this is cool? Was it, hey, I can do some new stuff? What made you, what was the appeal to get into the NFT space for you? Because you've had a huge, I mean, if I saw your CV and like your listing of gallery showings and things you've done in IRL is just monstrous. It's super impressive. And here you are chopping it up with me. You know, so you know, what appealed to you about the NFT space?
It started in 2017 when I joined a small social network. It was called Steam at the time.
Okay.
I think it still exists, but they forked it some time ago, and it's now Hive. It's called Hive.
Right.
There's also a currency attached to it called Hive, and I think there were some 250,000 users. I mean, compared to what Facebook is, what, 3 billion. So a relatively small community. And the special thing was that every like you got was attached to a monetary value. You'd get some Hive when someone would give you a like or a comment or something. And the interesting thing was that I learned a lot about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and all of these things. And then one day, American artist, her name is Twibble, Danya Strong in real life. I think she's from Los Angeles and is a close friend in the space. And then she wrote me a note saying, hey, Reinhard, there's a platform where you can tokenize your work. And I'm like, wow, I'd just been on another platform. It was called Rear Art Labs in New York. And they had minted a few pieces, so I knew what it was. But their project was discontinued. So all of a sudden there was this new place, MakersPlace, and she said, come on over there and look at it and mint some of your work. So I'm like, oh my God, what is this? So I saw hers, bought it right away. I mean, at the time it was, I don't know, $10, you know, there wasn't the big financial interest.
Right.
It was just, oh my God, this is working. I can look at this in my wallet, you know? So it's mine. And then of course I had to mint the piece too. And then I think August 28th is my 5-year anniversary on MakersPlace. And yeah, that's how it went.
That's wild. And I know a lot of people are saying, you know, sometimes I see things on Twitter, people talking about the, you know, they're OGs because they came in early 2021. And, you know, there's lots of people that were here building long before that. It's interesting that you say it was, it was Hive, and its predecessor, because a lot of people came from Scent as well, right? So I think these written communities that were kind of like message boards with incentivization that had blockchain tied to it. There was a lot of
Right.
community building that happened there. I know Whale Shark, right, was
Yes,
over
he
in
was
Scent,
very
and
active on Scent. Yeah, I remember.
yeah. So how, and then you said you found your way to Whale. Did Whale Shark collect your piece first, or did you hear about what he was trying to do? How did that connection happen?
I'm trying to remember how it went exactly. Um,
Listen, it's a long time ago, so don't if you don't know offhand, not a big deal. But
it could be that I tagged him, you know, because back in those days, he encouraged people to show him their work, and he said, you know, do it in a friendly and kind manner, and I'll take a look. I mean, back then there weren't that many artists, you know.
right,
Even MakersPlace, they would send me an email. Ryoma is one of the co-founders. I remember several times he'd email me and say, hey Reinhard, you want to mint something? And you know, a year later you couldn't even get into the platform.
right.
And with Whale Shark, I remember in the beginning we had a few really nice chats, and we also talked about my traditional art. He seemed to like my technique, the pencil on glass, and he started collecting my work. He owns quite a few pieces, yes.
Well, he did, but now we have about 10 pieces of yours in the Whale Vault, which is owned by us, the community. So he can,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
and that now it's in our hands. So we're blessed that he passed that along, and we have some incredible artists, yourself included, in there. So the Whale Vault is something we cherish dearly, and we're glad that you are part of it. What do you think that the NFT format, allows that's unique for you in comparison to your physical manifestations?
Well, there's several things. I mean, it begins with the media. I mean, when you do a traditional painting, obviously it's a still image.
Right.
And so that's the one big opportunity I have, that I can animate my work and that I can add a soundtrack, which I really enjoy. Particularly when you have machines, you know, I mean, okay, you can draw a very complex blueprint type drawing, but when you can make it move, it's even better. So
Right.
that's one thing. And then of course it's not just another digital work or a video or something. Uh, since you can make it a token, you know, you can transfer ownership. People can own it, people can buy, sell, whatever. And I mean, you know, we don't want to think about it much, but the last few years with COVID being such a problem with real life shows and everything, it was a very good opportunity to still be present as an artist worldwide, actually.
Yeah, and that manifestation in in the metaverse, as we say it, right, allow people to have that connectivity that they really long for during that time, and I think it stuck, and I think it personally, I think it sped up what the inevitable was the appreciation, and I say appreciation not as in number go up, as in people understanding the value of digital assets, and also cultural connection, right? Connection. There's a more intimate connection, I think, in this space that you can have with a creator, as opposed to just buying something and never really knowing. Like I'm talking with you right now, right? And so I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
it's definitely an interesting and different experience. Um, is the process different for you in creating an NFT versus when say you wanted to create something specifically for the digital format, not translating your physical into digital, but you set off, I'm going to make this a digital creation. Is the process different for you? Is it more fluid, or is it similar to what you would do in the physical? Like, do you do the same thing? Do you apply the same technique here? Like, you're trying to do the foreground and then do the background last, or now, because layers are pretty fluid in digital, you can just do it however you want?
It is a little different. I mean, it's even with traditional media, it's obviously very different to do a drawing on paper or an oil painting, you know. Or when I do a glass painting, like you explained earlier, I have to plan it backwards. I have to start with whatever is closest to the viewer first, and then I work away from the viewer. I mean, the distances are marginal, but still, it's exactly the other way around than an oil painting. With an oil painting, you start what is on you start with the ground, the background, and then you work towards the viewer, and then like the highlights in the eyes and the tiniest details come last. With my glass painting, I have to do it the other way around. And then I have done pieces that are natively digital, with none of my traditional work involved. Actually, that fish you're showing right now was done completely digital from the ground up. It was inspired. Sorry for the noise.
No problem.
Folks having a party outside. It is inspired by a traditional piece. That fish I had done an oil painting, but it looks completely different. But like the parts I had already planned for a traditional painting. But then I took that painting kind of like a blueprint for this 3D piece, and I created it from ground up in Blender, animated it, and then made put it on a stage with other elements, and created pieces like patterns for the background in Photoshop, things like that, and then I put it all together in After Effects.
So, amazing process. Thank you for some insight in the differences there.
And
Go ahead.
If I may add to that, and it's also, when I still love painting, so when I go into my studio in the morning, I'm not big of a breakfast person, so I just grab a cup of coffee, go to my studio, and then prepare my palettes and all, and then you have the turpentine smell, and there's a lot of touch, and even the sound of the tools and all of that is, I like that. It puts me into a certain mindset. And with digital, it's very different. You sit down by your computer. I mean, of course, often I have these sketches, but then I have to, I have different windows open where I have my folders with all the things I might have created before. I create almost all my resources myself. I mean, there are a few pieces where I, for instance, used an IA. I think there are actually a total of 3. And sometimes I take a photo, but I take the photo myself or the video sequence. And on very rare occasions, I buy like a 3D asset. But mostly it's more of a, how can one say, it's often a plugin that allows me to create something else. So like I said, almost all the assets used in my work are created by me.
That's super dope. And no shade on people that have to use other things, but it's just a keen insight to how much you really love the process. And the funny thing is, you talk about like the stimulus that the tactile feel of things or the smell can be. And the first thing I think about is food, because believe it or not, I feel like for me, cooking is like one of my arts. Like someone, when people come in the kitchen and I'm cooking, I'm like, get out of here. Like, I want you to see the final presentation, but I like the colors, the sizzle, the smell, the touch of the peppers in my hand when they're a little bit bouncy, whatever. So I can totally, exactly. Exactly. I'm very passionate about my food, as the community would tell you. So I'd love to hear about your new collection here, Trippy Musings on MakersPlace. You said 5 years ago was when you first started with MakersPlace, and here we are once again with this new collection. And you're coordinating it with Flux Collective. You're in a gallery. Talk to me about this collection. What was your goal? What are you doing with it? And what does it mean to you?
It's well, the drop was offered to me by MakersPlace, like you say, a little last year sometime, and then when you get a solo drop, you have a person working with you. It was Hernan this time. He actually offered it to me and then said he could be my producer, and then we talked about things. And he said he likes my animations, I call it micro movies, because they're usually like a little story involved.
Right.
And then I said to him, well, just a little while ago, I had a successful drop on Nifty Gateway. And my first drop on Nifty Gateway was those 3D pieces. The collection was called Beautiful Mechanics, where we saw that fish earlier. And then I was thinking I could continue the story, and then Pat, my producer on Nifty Gateway, said, well, everybody loves the Smackman. Can't we do something with the Smackman? And I'm like, well, hey, yeah, I love the Smackman. So yeah, if that's okay, I'd love to do it. And so same thing with Hernan. I said, well, can we do some artwork based on the Smackman? I mean, it's pretty well known by now. And I've made many variations. I've told many stories with him involved. So we have this one, like I said, micro movie. It's a more complex piece with a little story to it, and then 3 shorter animations that where the Smackman plays the main role.
Yeah, so there's 4 pieces, right? So there's this one that's on auction right now. I think it actually went live, and this is a longer
The
animation
official
piece.
drop is in some 3 hours, I think. But the artwork is already can already be viewed on MakersPlace on the website.
Well, tell you what, they put that auction. It's already live, so people are making
Oh,
offers already on the
cool.
auction. I think
Hey, wow.
there must have been some demand because people are already are making offers there, right? So,
Hey,
um,
cool.
there's an auction piece which is and I'm showing everybody now, which is the more story driven, longer animation that incorporates a lot of those elements that we talked about.
Mhm.
I love how that hit the screen and literally acted like it smacked the screen there. So those subtle touches that are nods to like, are we watching something? It's kind of messing with my reality, my perception of what's happening. That's why I dig a lot of your stuff. So this is the auction piece. There's also 2 limited editions. So if people wanted to get involved that way, and there's an open
Right,
edition as well. We'll take a look at those.
exactly. Um, on your screen, if I'm not mistaken, I see that auction piece Luna. And the limited editions, they're both about the Smackman, where he it's these are like shorter loops with a soundtrack.
Right. And then there's
Can you still
the
hear
open
me?
edition as well. Yep. Can you hear me also?
Oh, it looked like I lost you. Okay, thanks. The open edition is called Scribbleman, and it's also a short loop on a blue background. Looks like I have my blue face now, so I love blue. And they're all UHD resolution because we wanted to have them optimized for the screens here in the gallery. And in Scribbleman, you just have that like a blue background, and all of a sudden little lines start moving, and as they move, there are more and more lines, and they make up the Smackman face, and then it goes up. It's actually playing, on this side here behind me. I don't know if you can see it.
We can. We
Whoops, now
can.
it's going up again. See my blue, and so it builds up, and then it disappears again. And on
So
the other side, over here, is the piece that's called Dong. It's a limited edition, 49 editions. And it's the background is several layers of traditional artwork. And then he's like beating a gong, You'd have to hear the soundtrack with it. Yes, I see them on the screen right now. And the Chasing Angel, the one in the reds. The angel is a figure that I took out of a big oil painting. The oil painting is, I don't know in inches, it's about 3 by 4 feet, actually even bigger. 2 yards by 1.5 yards almost is the original painting.
wow.
And I took that figure and animated it. And obviously, when you have a painting and say there is, there is one arm here and then one in front, and if you want to animate it, you have to actually repaint those pieces that are hidden in the painting, because otherwise you'd have a blank space there. And there is this funny propeller thing on top of it. Like I said, the theme of the show back then, it was a group show. It was Exquisite Angel was the theme. And I didn't want to just paint an angel with wings, traditional way. So I thought, why don't I just take this figure and add this funny vehicle to it with more of sail type wings and wheels turning. And I didn't have enough of that mechanical piece in the painting to make it go around all the way. So I completely recreated it in Blender, animated it, and then put it back together with the painting. And then I put it into this piece and added the Smackman, added a moving background. And then on the bottom, there is a sequence of figures that were also created in 3D. And I animated them in 3D, so it's not just a banner going by. I wanted them to be turning and twirling, but in a 2D kind of look.
It almost reminds me of a Disney dance scene, like Beauty and the Beast or something, where they're like floating and ballroom dancing or something.
Right,
So many elements and so much goes into the thought process there, from the reconstruction of physicals to new digital manifestations. And I think that's why people really are drawn to your work, is the depth of both the technique and just the wild ideas that you put together, right? Like, I'm not going to do a regular angel. I need a mechanical angel, shifting gears and something steampunk, but whimsical. Like, it's out there. Sounds like how I told my tattoo artist to sketch me a custom, quite honestly. That's pretty much what I gave him for a description. I'll have to show you a picture of it sometime. Maybe you'll have you'll be some inspo for the next one. But I also think, it's incredible that you're coming to us live from the gallery. Talk to me about that. Was this show already planned? How did this all come together, and why are you excited about it?
There is the German FLUX Collective. It's a group of NFT enthusiasts. They're based here in the area Düsseldorf, Cologne. And from the very beginning, when we first met, they were very, very supportive. We got along really well. They're really cool, all of them, and have a great interest in art, very educated about art. And so, they were always doing things. They were speakers on major events. And we had, a little while ago, we made the Smackman coin together, because, they supported me so much. I had a feeling that I really should do something to thank them. So I created this kind of like a cyber coin, that turns in 3D space. And there's a Smackman on the one side. On the other side is the logo of the FLUX Collective. And they made this token. You can still buy it, and it gives you certain privileges, when you want to collect my art. And then I always forget something, I'm sure, but to make this story short, the gallery opened here in Düsseldorf, and the owner of the space asked the FLUX Collective to run and curate the gallery. Actually, two of the guys are here. I think they should just come here and so you could see them. Frank, Thorsten, come here.
Sure, we'd love that.
Show yourself. This is Frank.
Hey, Frank.
I'm sure you've seen his tweets on Twitter. And Kude, he is the man who made the different variations of the Smackman coin. And they run the place, and they invited me to have the show here.
And we love Reinhard.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Exciting stuff. This is the second NFT show.
They've had two before, I think, right? No?
That's right. We had the opening show 2 months ago. That was more like a group show of artworks out of our collective, of the collectors of our collective. But we showed some some new pieces from traditional artists. The first piece was a digital sculpture that was made by Unique Board in New York that we have shown here as well. And then last month we started our first solo show together with Motion Sickness, Patrick Ortmann from Frankfurt. He's also very nice, very great artist. Established, and he dropped on every major platform as well, and even at Super Chief Gallery, for example, in New York. They also showed his artworks. So that was also very, was a great show for us. But the most important show is now.
Right? Yeah. No,
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, the gallery looks great. The gallery looks great from the pictures, and then having you guys allowing us to tune in live. We're really excited about it. Definitely hyped up, and you got the right man here. That's definitely got the hearts of the crypto art movement. So can't wait to see the pictures later on from the showing tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And Düsseldorf is quite a big major art city in Germany. We are next to the gallery of the Art Academy. The Art Academy has artists like Gerhard Richter coming from here, and Joseph Beuys, Tony Craig, Andreas Gursky. So of all fields of art are
the holy grail of art in Germany.
It's coming.
Nice. How was the reception? How was the reception for NFTs and digital art from the traditional art infrastructure in Germany? Do they support it? Are they coming around, or have they always been very interested?
I would say they are very curious, although the whole gallery scene in Düsseldorf is very conservative because of the Art Academy. It's very traditional. So it wasn't always easy for the artists at the Art Academy to handle digital art, but in the meanwhile, there are a few great digital artists who also come from the Art Academy, and I think it's now open up a little bit. And for example, last week we had a very, very successful show, an NFT symposium in Museum Volkwang. That's not too far from here. It's in Essen. It's also a very famous museum, and they are showing a big solo show. For the first German museum shows an NFT solo show by an artist, and it's Raphael Rosendahl from the Netherlands at the moment. And there was a big NFT symposium with a lot of curators, and even Eric Calderon from Artblocks was online, and we have moderated the symposium that was last Saturday. So I would say it's coming in Germany. It's coming.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Very active groups like you guys.
Yeah, especially in this area here. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm in the metaverse, so I appreciate people telling me about IRL stuff.
Thank you.
So awesome stuff, Reinhard. If you want at some point, or you could keep it stationary, but if you wanted to walk around or move it, feel free to do that as well. That's up to you. Who knows what else is going on there? There could be some construction or other stuff, but if you wanted to.
It's up to you. If you want me to show you a little bit, I
think the people at home would appreciate that.
I don't know if how I could turn around the camera. Can you work like this?
Yep, we can see it.
So this is the one over here is a trailer of artworks I've been doing in the past. There's actually some art that has been minted for Art for Whale. There's some very early Smackman pieces that where I did the animation frame by frame because I didn't know there was a software that could do it for you. And they made this nice text for me up there. It's the title of the show. And
I like the headphones too, so people can listen to it.
Yes, like we said earlier, the soundtrack is a very important part of the artwork. So this is outside here, and here we have the famous Smackman coin. Sorry for not the best cameraman here.
No, this is brilliant. This is great. We love this.
Thorsten, you have seen earlier, he made all the different variations. I think he made 39 variations of the original coin. And then we had a professional composer from Hamburg, Michael Imperium. He's done a ton of game music, for instance. I think it's like 400 million downloads. He created the soundtracks, and they have different rarities. So if you go to the minting page and mint one, you could still get the legendary. The one of one, if I'm not mistaken, is still available, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's still
Only
there.
only 400 million. That was a subtle flex.
And here is like a counter where we'll have some drinks later on, and monitors with information running. And here is Frank working hard to promote the show.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm sure that the press, especially given the environment there, is going to be very intrigued, and you'll have people coming in to talk with you in addition to me, and I'm eager to see what the reception is. Obviously, you're an outstanding artist and representation of the NFT space, so we're proud to have you repping us out there. That was just striking to me that I just said that, and I said that with all sincerity, but it's like we were just talking about regional nuances, what's happening in Germany, what's happening in the US, but I just felt and naturally said, you're representing us, because I feel like we have a borderless kind of culture of what kind of came about and people really building and coming together with the NFT movement. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And that was just striking to me.
Exactly. And particularly with the Well community, I've always felt very much at home there. Just like MakersPlace is my platform because it was the first one that I found. I have some work on Super Rare too and on non-origin, but there's always something with the first place that you've been to, and also with the Well community. Your whole team, Rune, the Cryptolorian, all of these people. My head is always a little empty when I'm being interviewed. I'm sure there are many, many more. Cartoon Advisory comes to my mind. You've all been supporting me, building spaces to show my work and all of that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm
very connected with the Well community.
We're just blessed to be able to interact and speak with amazing creatives like yourself every day.
But it goes both ways, I have met so many really special people there, and even with you, I remember when we were talking about when Midjourney first started, and then I had the privilege to listen to your music and all of these things. It's so amazing, and I'm always curious. Maybe it's because I'm an artist, but I'm so curious about people and their life stories, and I'm a real sucker for it.
Well, digital allows us to have those intimate connections, right? It's part of what makes the NFT movement so great, and what people, some people that come in it from different exposures, it's always encouraging when they learn that and understand that it's not about financialization. Like you said, you were experimenting and you thought it was just amazing that it worked. And that was the reward. Hey, this is actually on the blockchain. Forget anything else, right? And here we are today. So there's a lot of enriching things that happen in this space. So anyone that's not as entrenched, hasn't been here a long time, understand that the headlines can be deceiving. There's a long history of culture here that's very, very, very rich, and you are a big part of that, Reinhard. You mentioned our discussions. We talked about AI. We were talking about music. You are someone that enjoys experimentation. I've seen some of yours that you were playing around with and never made it onto anything else. How has your creative endeavors and what you do evolved over the past couple of years? Is there new things that you added to your bag, new stuff that you're playing with?
There's always something new. Not too long ago, someone asked me in a German interview what I think an artist should do. Should they, keep the tradition and do what has been proven to work and things like that, or should they experiment? And I said, I think, of course, everyone has to make that decision for themselves. But if we never experimented, we'd still put pigment with a stick on a cave wall. So, I mean, artists have always experimented, and I think they've always been at the forefront of technology. It's just been different over the centuries. For instance, when oil painting was invented, that was probably as revolutionary as the invention of digital art. So, and the greatest masters, they adopted those new technologies. They were the first ones to do it. And it's always been like that. Then later on, eventually, there was photography. And I'm sure in the very beginning, people said, why put up all these devices to get a picture that you could just as well paint? Today, it's like, why go through the trouble of painting it if you could have an AI make it for you? So, but still, I think there is, it's okay. And it's important actually to have the tradition, to build upon the knowledge that's been accumulated. But for me, it's always been very important to try whatever new thing is available.
Very cool.
And I like to have a big toolbox.
Yeah, you do. So the answer was everything. I think I mentioned in passing to you that I was digging out some old CRT monitors and handhelds to like mess around with video. And you're like, oh yeah, I did that. Like whenever, it's like this guy's done everything and continues to do it. But it's wonderful to know that it's really out of your curiosity and love for just like, what people say. Some people are like, oh, how are you on Discord? How are you doing this and that? You know what? I geek on this stuff. I love this stuff. I'd be doing it anyway. If they told me, hey, you're no longer part of Whale, I'd have an alt and I'd be in there, geeking out, because it's just, it's what I love. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. And you understand, because you're a creative person. You're, I don't know if it's the right word, a sensual person, because you love those sensations of a smell, of a touch, and things like that. But also, you live in our time. You understand those new things, those new technologies. Also with music, you can play an instrument, and if you're a master at it, it's very impressive. But you can also use different tools to create music. So for me, it's just always very interesting to, the goal is to visualize my idea, or to transport my idea, I should say, because there's audio involved as well. And an idea per se is nothing until you share it, until you bring it in, you turn it into a way that can be perceived by others. Up until then, it's just in your head. So, it's not doing anything. And I just want to have whatever I can to bring that idea out into the world, as many different options as possible.
I love that. And speaking of ideas, what have you been drawing on for inspiration lately? What has been kind of some of the things that have really inspired you to create?
Whenever someone asks me that question, I have to think of a friend. He is unfortunately no longer alive, Professor Ernst Fuchs. He was one of the key members of a movement in the 1970s, 80s in Vienna. It was called the Vienna School of Fantastic Art, and is quite famous here in Europe, very well known. And in an interview, someone asked him, so Professor Ernst Fuchs, what inspires you? And he said, everything. And I'm like, yeah, he's right. It's exactly the same thing for me. I look out the window, a bird flies by, I have an idea. Or we talk, you say something, and I'm like, oh yes, I should use that for a painting. It's, I don't know, it's just whatever.
I love that. And maybe, and it sounds like from our conversations, and I'm guessing here, but I would think that this applies to you as well. For me personally, the creative energy of other people get me fired up, and not,
Absolutely.
and it's like I see someone else in their own lane make something dope, and I'm like, man, that's so awesome. And then I want to create also because they've made me feel that energy and inspired me. And not the same thing, but just however I can create. It's like,
it
that's so
sparks
cool.
Something else. Exactly.
Right.
It's the same thing for me. I mean, it could be walking through an art exhibition, or even just going through my Instagram account. You know, I'm like, oh yeah, wow, what a great idea. And sometimes I'm like, darn, why didn't I have that idea? But like you said, it's creativity is very inspiring.
It definitely is. Yeah, yeah. I would agree. So we have to have more DMs, I suppose, right? And then maybe I'll get off my butt and do something as well. I will say,
should do a collab.
well, I mean, like, you know, let me dust off the microphone first. I have to take baby steps, Reinhard. You're you know, you're in your prime. I'm lapsed, I guess. But in that vein, in true crypto art ethos, you're very collaborative and experimental. You've done a lot of cool stuff. Anything on deck that you could share? Give us a little alpha about that's in the works.
You mean what is coming?
Yeah, anything that we should be on the lookout for or excited about? I mean, don't get yourself in trouble, but we do like leaks here.
Okay. Well, I still paint, like I said. I have a few commissions lined up, but it would be very difficult to talk about those. The one is actually super interesting because the person commissioning me is a member of a special forces team. And,
wow.
But nobody knows about that. And so it's a physical artwork that is layered in a way that there is a public image and a secret image. And only if you know, I will build a device that will have secret switches, and you know, we'll have to unlock things, and then you can unlock the secret painting. So that's a physical artwork I'm working on. And for instance, and then, like I said, I mean, my 5-year anniversary on MakersPlace is coming up. It will be something that is reminiscent of that very first piece, but new elements added to it, you know, because there's also been a lot of, I've been able to improve my skills. I mean, when I first minted pieces, there were mostly still images or very simple animations. Like I said, I hand made every frame because I didn't know how else to do it. And so with time, I learned how to use After Effects, Blender, and those things. So after 5 years, that piece should also show that process of learning new things. And MakersPlace told me there will be follow-up solo drops, and I have some ideas for that. If I try to tell you, it's going to be very abstract, so it's going to be very different from this one.
Okay. Well,
just keep your eyes on it.
Well, now I'm getting heat already for a collab to happen. So thank you for the pressure. I appreciate it. Sometimes I do my best work under pressure.
Yes.
So listen, I know I know you're under an hour until the gallery opens. So thank you so much for chopping it up with us today. I do have a few questions from the community. If you just got a couple more minutes, I'd love to ask them. So a couple people DM me some questions. One you just answered that you're working on, but they said, hey, do you still create physicals? And how much of your time would you say is physical versus your digital?
I would say it's definitely a lot more time for my paintings because it's just a much more time-consuming process. You know, a very complex digital artwork, even if it's a lot of 3D work involved, it's maybe 4 weeks. If I do a large, complex painting, it could be 4 months.
Wow. Okay. And you know, I know a lot of people within our community love to understand process. It just gives them a better appreciation of, you know, the artwork and how rich it is with just ideas and heart and soul poured into it. So thank you. Another question that someone DM'd me, I'm not really sure what they're referencing here, is it says, do you still work with children locally?
Okay, must be from someone who knows the story. I've done workshops with a local special needs school. Unfortunately, we had to, well, COVID was a big interruption, I should say. It was not the end of it.
Right.
And we have just spoken about continuing the project, which is very dear to me, by the way. So
Oh,
I still want to pick up on that.
that's awesome. That's incredible. And shout out to you for doing that. And here's a good one to cap things off on, being that you're in a gallery right now. Someone asked, what do you think the traditional art space can learn and adapt from crypto art culture? And then the inverse, what can the NFT movement adapt and take from the traditional art space?
Difficult question. One thing I see that is working very well in NFT art space is the communities. I've been in communities with traditional art. I mean, obviously there are groups. I've grown into that because when I first started, the first 20 years of my career, I was pretty much just on my own. I didn't have connections or many connections to other artists. And when I had, when I got in touch with other artists, I always wanted to do things that were very different from what was trendy at the time. So it was early in my career, it was difficult, but then later on, with my work becoming more complex and taking more time, I couldn't really do solo shows, so I switched to group shows, and then you're with these groups, but they're relatively small. In NFT, these groups are people from all over the planet, so I think that is very nice because there is always an exchange of ideas, of culture, and like I said, I'm very curious about how people in other places in the world see things or experience things. So I think it's very, very inspiring, particularly in those NFT-focused communities. And I think that's one thing that would be nice in traditional art. I just don't know if one could transfer that because NFT are natively digital. In traditional, you have so many people who, I mean, I have colleagues who don't even have a computer. So it would be very difficult there. And vice versa, difficult to say. I don't know. Time will tell, I think. For me, one thing that is important in both spaces is to create value through art. Not just throw out something or a big project with tens of thousands of units and try to make a lot of money. I mean, obviously, I have to make money too because that's how I make a living. But there should be a balance, and the art we are creating, we should create with that thought in mind that we want to create value, something valuable for people, something that inspires them, and that they will love to keep. Someone said the other day, if it's worth minting, it's worth keeping. So I thought that was a nice thing to say.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much. Those are some clip-worthy gems that you left for me there. You may see those on socials because I just think I want to share that more broadly. But thank you also for coming to us live right before your gallery show. I know you got a lot to tend to, and you're excited about it. We're excited. So the drop, Trippy Musings, is live. The auction's live. I think the open editions go live a little bit later on this afternoon. We'll drop the links on our Discord. It's also on our socials if you're tuning in from Twitter and YouTube and whatnot. And then also, if people are in the area, be sure to check out the gallery show at NEONREAL. Come on through.
We're going to have a Twitter space just 15 minutes before the drop, 7:45 Central Europe time, just 15 minutes to, for some last minute questions or just to capture the atmosphere here before it takes off. And big thanks to you again. First, for being so patient, with that interview, and second, for finally making it happen, particularly in this environment, so that you agreed to make it like this tonight. Thank you so much.
Listen, the thanks go to you. The pleasure's all ours. Thank you for tuning in live. Hopefully, you inspire some other artists to go and do the same thing. This has been awesome. So have a great showing tonight. Have a great drop, and we'll be watching keenly to see, some of the pictures from the event and hearing more about it.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone showing up. Thank you for everyone being interested. Say hi to Whale Shark and everyone in the team, and all the best for all of you.
We will. Same here. Same to you, Reinhard. Have a great show. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.